I want to go to the press conference yesterday, Mike J, because I thought I said this on Friday, and he kind of reiterated it on Monday, but I wasn't sure. I said, this will be interesting to see where they're at with was this scheme, or do we just need to coach it up better, or do we need to look at some personnel? It seemed like he was open to all three, right? Didn't he was firm and direct, but no real sense of panic. There's some things they got to coach up better. Definitely need to take a look at some new personnel and or maybe how the personnel fit with the self eval thing. But then what's the next step for week 2? It didn't seem like there was a ton of mixed messages, did it?
Well, you're talking wide receivers specifically, or just
no, not so the wide receivers was the Minnesota thing. I'm back on Nebraska and Coach Rhule.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they need to come out of the game against Cincinnati and just make change after change after change. I think some of it is, hey, let's see what this sort of looks like. These were the guys that we chose because that's what it looked like for us going through fall camp. These are the guys that we wanted to put in this position. I don't know that there's anything that happened in that game last Thursday where it should just be, oh no, we've got to completely radically change things. Like some guys, some of it with the defensive line is it's easy to forget. A lot of those guys, none of those guys had a career start, right? Like maybe Cam Lenhart did.
Lenhart had a couple.
Them are being put in situations for the first time in their career where they're asked to play a large amount of reps, or they're asked.
How about Buddha? I mean, 7 years first start.
Right. And so, there's just some of this is you got to let people play into what the role is. And I'm guilty of it too, where you finally get to week 1 and the expectation is that they should look radically different or be this or be that. And then you go ahead and you watch all of college football over the weekend and you realize, like, one, pretty sloppy out there. And relative to what we saw, Nebraska played a pretty clean game. There's lots of things that they can fix and be better at going forward. But I don't know that I look at it like you got to reinvent the wheel or scrap the entire plan based on what we saw on Thursday. And I don't think the coaches think that either. So some of it is, hey, let's see what we can get done here in a couple of weeks that it effectively, to me, and I think everybody else, feels like some fine tuning, and see who can step up and who can play well and develop some potential depth if you're able to get a big enough lead and all of those sorts of things. But nothing should be thrown in the scrap heap. And that's sort of the feeling that I got out of it.
Schaefer, what were you most encouraged by?
Encouraged. Well, obviously the secondary played really, really well. And there is a part of me that wonders if we discounted the fact that your defensive coordinator came from the secondary, knew a lot of those pieces, would know sort of where they're going to be best positioned. But also the new defensive backs coach or secondaries coach in Addison Williams, the former defensive coordinator. You have Bill, maybe it shouldn't be as surprising that Nebraska could have strong defensive back play because of all of the different minds and people that are working with those guys that are high-level thinkers and have had experience at a high level working with the defensive backs, and you have some experience there. So, I felt good about what we saw there. And without having the full scope of the stadium to watch all of the coverage and everything, I mean, from what you could see from the ESPN broadcast, they were sticking to those receivers or sticking to their area really well. I thought they flowed well. I like little things like Williams Nwaneri's backside pursuit. When a play got by him, he didn't stop. He kept running. He was pursuing things down the field. I mean, there's little stuff in there that I thought sort of stood out. I like that their mental attitude was good throughout the game. There wasn't sort of that moment where you thought that they were defeated, or even when Cincinnati had the ball and things were moving, I didn't sense any sort of panic or any, here we go again, from the players on the field. The fan base, sure, absolutely. But the people that are tasked with actually making the plays seem to be calm, cool, and collected. So there's little stuff in there. I mean, you love that there was no turnovers. You love that there was only 3 penalties, 2 that felt really big in the time of which they happened. But ultimately, Nebraska still left with a win. So I think there's a lot to be encouraged by in there. Just like there's a lot where you're like, well, this didn't look good, or this didn't look how you wanted it to, and things like that. But again, it's week 1. I don't know that there's really any team that's going to be walking out of week 1 and are like, yeah, we absolutely loved everything we did this weekend.
I think it's cool, too, because I think there's a lot of good teaching tape from it, whether it's I mean, it's little stuff too. Coming inside on a pass rush and letting Sorsby get outside, or chasing down a backside reverse, or just missing on a 4th and 2. But one of the interesting things I thought is because right after the game there was this, I don't know, there's all this discourse about the backs, right? And the rotation, and I thought they were this, and I hadn't had enough time to really process it Friday morning. Schaefer, I was on about an hour 10 sleep, came right here, and I said, sometimes I think in games like that, the rotation gets away from the staff, right? I said, it's happened, right? Coach Solich has been like, hey, guys, my bad. It got away from me. This happened and unfolded in the game. And I was encouraged to hear Coach Rhule address the running back rotation and how it may be different for this week, because I felt like that's definitely one thing they would probably go back and get, or at least be patient with, but understood in that kind of game in the opener, it probably got away from them.
Yeah, and at the same time, they probably needed the 32 touches from Emmett Johnson because he was one of the effective guys pushing the ball forward for him, keeping possession for him. I mean, so it kind of cuts both ways, right? Like, I'm sure they wish they could have gotten more work for some of those other guys, and yet at the same time, taking Emmett off the field was going to, I think, drastically lessen how things were likely to go for you. So you gotta push pull there, and you have to land somewhere in the middle, and leaving with the win is more valuable than establishing an early season rotation. These next couple of weeks, when we're talking fine tuning, that's exactly what it is. It's working in Mekhi Nelson and Isaiah Mosey, because in the run of things during the game, it felt jarringly weird when they were in. Things didn't feel right. It felt, I don't even know what the word I want to use.
One thing I wish I wanted to say about that is when you sub a back in, sometimes I don't want the other subs in with me. I want the guys that are starting too. And I felt like twice in particular, if Carter Nelson gets the block on the perimeter versus Mosey, that thing is creased. And then Mekhi gets the whiff on the backside from a tight end. If that block is made, that is creased. So I don't know if I'm rocking with the whole vibe is different as much as I want as much opportunity to have success as the next guy. If you're gonna compare me, you know what I mean?
And it definitely wasn't that everything was clean or set up, but it just, the way that things played out, certainly just, it felt that way. And then I don't know if it's because of how things weren't blocked, but it didn't feel as crisp, certainly as an operation, as what you had seen in other plays in the three that those guys were in, right or wrong.
To your point, I think you're right, because what's the natural inclination for a coach? Get my guy back in. Because he sees the result of what happened, and it's like, well, that was different. Even because at that time, you're not thinking of the why. You're thinking, get my guys back.
Yeah, you're thinking of the what.
So I do think people thought like that, and that's why you do those quick subs. I'm saying that's how it gets away from them. It doesn't have to be like that. It really does.
And I mean, right or wrong, the gap between 1 and 2 at running back is astronomically large at Nebraska.
I just don't think it is.
It may not seem like it to you because you've had access in a way that other people haven't, but there's no way coming out of Thursday's game with what people saw from Emmett Johnson that you're going to have the same opinion. And there's no way, because we haven't seen Mekhi Nelson. And this needs to be said. Nebraska doesn't have a single running back on its roster, and that includes Emmett Johnson, who people like, that were recruited by other Power 4 teams. So all of this is we have to see it before we're going to accept that the gap isn't that big. And then it doesn't help things when on Sunday night, Jamar Brown looks pretty good for Miami. And you're thinking to yourself, man, it would have been nice to have that yin and yang. So Nebraska's made its bed with running backs, and they're going to have to fight this narrative until they don't. And that's just what it is. I don't think there's enough sort of, hey, give it patience, give it time. I mean, they've had a running back room that has been problematic for years. This didn't just sneak up on them. And so now people are like, we're not accepting this until we see it. And when you get into game 1 and there's 3 touches by the other running backs and they're only in there for 3 times, the message that sends to the fan base is that we don't have somebody behind him. Right, wrong, or indifferent, That's what it says loud and clear.
Regardless of what you just heard their head coach say at the press conference.
But do we really need to go through all the different stuff Matt Rhule has said that hasn't played out in the actual
I don't know.
football
I just think
field?
it's interesting that he picked running.
But Damon, go back to 2023 when they wanted to finish the games on the field with their running game, and they weren't going to play Anthony Grant because of ball security. And then Anthony Grant, there is so much with the running back and emotional baggage with this fan base and with this staff in just the last decade. It has not gone how they have talked. Emmett Johnson has emerged from the bottom of the depth chart 2 years in a row. Quentin Ives has been discussed as somebody that they're really excited about. And for whatever reason, we've never seen it play out on the field. You can't keep telling people things, and then what happens on the actual football field doesn't line up. People are going to tune it out. And I think that's where we're at with running back. I know I've been there for a while. I don't care what they say. Show me on the field.
Schaefer, as you look at the wide receiver play, obviously Nebraska was pretty insistent on being patient with the routes they were running based on Cincinnati's coverage and that type of thing. Is that something in the next couple weeks you're hoping to see against obviously inferior opponents, that they're able to stretch the field a little bit more, or is it even going to matter until they get to Michigan?
Yeah, I think one of the tough things, and again, this is, and Ravi, I don't know if you were there on Thursday or not, but Damon certainly would have the view of it. Without really, and ESPN didn't show this a whole lot on their coverage. You never really saw where safeties were. I think a safety came down one time and they hit the plate in Isaiah Hunter, and it's like they never did that again. And so I don't know if they were in cover 3 or cover 2, or it felt like everything was a shell, keep everything in front of you. And Nebraska was content to take the sort of bubble coverage that was there. The sort of problem is that for whatever reason, Nebraska doesn't create explosive plays in the same way, or when they have those opportunities, the ball's a little high and behind for Cortez Mills. So he has to make a catch instead of running with it. He's having to sort of react to it. You've got, what was the other one? Ja'Cory Barney, where it felt like that could have been a big explosive play, and he's tackled on a hit on the thigh. So I think it's in this offense to be able to do it, even if they have to stay a little bit contained because of where safety play is at. They just haven't shown it quite yet. I have confidence that they can be explosive in the passing game, but it is sort of one of these things where it feels like they've had to dink and dunk a lot in the last year plus. And so for that to be almost the entirety of the game, to have one play over 20 yards, to, I don't even know how many passes they finished over 10 yards, or what the average depth of target was on most of these passes. But you play the game that you're in, and they played this game against Cincinnati, and it was largely successful. I think I saw somewhere, Dylan Raiola had one incompletion in the second half, and I'm guessing it was on that 4th and 2. Otherwise, he was distributing the ball well. He wasn't getting it deep downfield, but ultimately you're taking chunks of time off the clock, and they weren't really having a problem moving the ball. They would get to a certain point where they couldn't finish, and that's part of it, where if you can get a few more chunk plays in there, cut off some of the distance you have to travel, it would go a long way. So I have confidence that there's explosive plays that can follow in this passing game. They're going to have to unlock some of those, and teams might just continue to play them with that sort of look if they think they can contain Nebraska that way. Some of it, if they run the ball a little bit better, it could also open things up in the passing game too. Long term, I just don't have a ton of fear just based off of this one game with Nebraska's passing game. I think they can be more explosive than what we saw.
I think finishing drive rate is probably the most important thing, because you have to. This is as a coach, I'm thinking, well, we play these close games, and so teams don't really have to get out of their comfort zone, right? They don't have to take a ton of chances. You just kind of get to stick to the script. And so I think what we've seen happen to Nebraska offensively, without teams necessarily having to play from behind or panic or anything like that, you kind of get to play it safe, right? We probably need to keep better track of the times that Nebraska's had the opportunity to go up 3 scores, like Illinois,
4 times against Cincinnati, right?
Or Cincinnati, where if you don't want people to play you safe, then you have to get them out of your comfort zone. So I think the finishing drive rate and scoring points will get teams to give you different looks. It's just the way that they played offensively the last handful of years with complementary defense. These games they're close, so nobody has to take any chances.
Yeah.
Like
well, and
you know what I mean?
I think you're absolutely right, because regardless of who the OC has been, I don't think Nebraska's issue on offense has been getting the drive going or getting a couple first downs. It just feels like when they get on the other side of the 50 or near midfield, things start to fall apart for them in a way that just they don't sustain or finish drives. And when you don't have those chunk plays, if you don't ever get a guy that just gets 24 yards from the 44-yard line to get you to the 20, and you're constantly having to get 4 yards here and 6 yards there and 2 yards and 3 yards and 5 yards, which is what Thursday night was. It's hard to do that over and over and over. And we think about what Tony White's defense was. They wanted teams to try to do that. They wanted to keep everything in front of you because they felt like over the course of a drive, you will make a mistake. You will have a penalty. You will have something that will derail you, and we're going to get off the field. And I think a lot of college defenses kind of built that way. So Nebraska's inability to create explosive plays, which is not just a Cincinnati game thing, that was an issue for much of the back half of last year. They're going to have to be able to solve that. I don't know where that comes from exactly. And I don't know if Cincinnati's defense is repeatable for everybody on Nebraska's schedule, but I think Michigan has the talent to keep stuff in front of them that way. So how are you going to consistently put together drives, or is your special teams good enough, which it was on Thursday, to overcome that? You hit a 52-yard field goal. You got a punter that can pin them, multiple times inside the 10-yard line. So these are the sort of things where Nebraska wasn't winning in the margin in the past, and that allowed them to win on Thursday. They were better in those areas.
That's our guy, Mike Schaefer, Husker247. Schaefer, appreciate the time. As always, we'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys, I appreciate it. Look forward to yelling about running backs all season long.
Thanks, Mike Schaefer.
That's our guy, Mike Schaefer, Husker247.